Brazil. More than Carnival and the Amazon, Brazil is a land of amazing differences and constant new beginnings. Its story is like a blanket made from many threads. Indigenous roots, colonial dreams, and the fight for freedom and who they are. From the first meetings on Bahia's shores to the busy cities of today, Brazil has been a stage for big changes. Colony, empire, republic, dictatorship, and democracy. Each time period shaped the Brazilian spirit, strong, creative, and complicated. To understand Brazil is to look into its deep history, from old indigenous groups to the modern big cities of Sao Paulo and Rio. This is the big journey of a country that keeps amazing the world. Before Brazil was Brazil, millions of indigenous people lived well here, organized into hundreds of tribes like the Tupi and Guarani. They lived in shared villages, farmed, fished, and felt a strong spiritual connection to the land. Their societies were rich, complex, and often had conflicts, with spiritual leaders guiding their lives and warriors protecting their communities. The Tupi were strong along the coast, good at navigating and surviving, knowing the land better than anyone. Their world was lively but not perfect. Friendships and rivalries shaped daily life. The Europeans arriving would break this world apart, starting a series of events that would change the land and its people forever. But indigenous influence still lives in Brazil's language, food, and spirit. Today, indigenous communities keep fighting for their rights and to protect their old lands. In April 1500, the Portuguese fleet led by Pedro Alvares Cabral made landfall on the lush shores of Bahia, forever altering the course of history in South America. The arrival of these ships marked the beginning of a new era as European explorers set foot on a land rich in natural beauty and resources, but already home to diverse indigenous peoples with their own cultures and traditions. At first, the Portuguese were interested mainly in trade, exchanging goods with local communities. But soon, they saw the value of pau-brasil, or Brazil wood, a tree prized for its red dye. The extraction and export of this wood became the first major economic activity, and it was so important that it gave the new colony its name, Brazil. By the mid-1500s, the focus shifted to sugarcane. Vast plantations, called indigenous, began to spread across the land. Sugar quickly became Brazil's main export, transforming the landscape and requiring a huge labor force to plant, harvest, and process the cane. The Portuguese first tried to enslave indigenous people, but resistance and deadly diseases devastated local populations. To keep the plantations running, they turned to the transatlantic slave trade, forcibly bringing over 4 million Africans to Brazil, more than any other place in the Americas. This was the largest forced migration in the continent's history. Slavery became the backbone of the colonial economy. The wealth generated by sugar and later other resources flowed into the hands of a small elite, while the vast majority, enslaved Africans and indigenous people, endured harsh conditions and exploitation. In the 18th century, the discovery of gold in Minas Gerais sparked a new rush. Thousands of people flocked to the region hoping to find fortune. Gold mining brought new towns like Ouro Preto and made Brazil even more valuable to Portugal. Cities grew rapidly, but society remained deeply unequal. Wealth and power were concentrated at the top, while most people lived in poverty or servitude, their lives shaped by the demands of the colonial system. Yet, out of this mix of hardship and hope, something unique emerged. The blending of indigenous, African, and Portuguese cultures created a vibrant new identity, seen in Brazil's music, food, language, and traditions. Even in the earliest days, resistance took root. Enslaved people and indigenous communities fought back, forming quilombos, settlements of escaped slaves, and sparking the first movements for freedom and justice. The story of Brazil as a colony was just beginning, a tale of struggle, survival, and the birth of a nation that would one day shape the world. The winds of revolution reached Brazil in the early 1800s, echoing the calls for change that swept across the Americas and Europe. Yet Brazil's journey to independence would unfold in a way unlike any other nation in the region. When Napoleon attacked Portugal, the royal family made a daring escape across the Atlantic, seeking refuge in their largest colony. The arrival of the Portuguese court in Rio de Janeiro transformed the city overnight, turning it into the heart of the Portuguese Empire. Dom João VI opened Brazil's ports to friendly nations, breaking the old colonial trade restrictions and encouraging new ideas, commerce, and modernization. The colony began to modernize rapidly, with new institutions, schools, and industries emerging, setting Brazil on a new path. But when Dom João returned to Portugal, political tensions and unrest grew as Brazilians demanded more autonomy and rights. In 1822, his son Dom Pedro, pressured by both Brazilian nationalists and the Portuguese crown, made a historic decision. With the famous shout, "Independence or death," he declared Brazil's independence, marking the birth of a new nation. Brazil became unique in the Americas, a monarchy led by a king, not a republic, with its own constitution and royal court. The new nation established a set of laws and institutions, aiming to balance tradition with progress. Dom Pedro became emperor, but his reign was marked by political strife and challenges to his authority. Facing mounting opposition and unrest, he eventually abdicated the throne, leaving the empire to his young son. The transition was uncertain, but it paved the way for a new era. Pedro II, ascending the throne as a child, would eventually become one of Brazil's most respected rulers. His long rule brought stability, peace, and further modernization, helping Brazil grow into a more unified nation. However, despite progress in industry and society, the institution of slavery remained deeply rooted, casting a long shadow over the country's achievements. The suffering of millions of enslaved people was a constant reminder of unfinished business. The empire's future was tied to the unresolved question of freedom. As the world changed and new ideas spread, more and more Brazilians joined the fight to end slavery and push for a fairer, more just society. As the sun rose on a new era, Brazil stood on the edge of transformation, ready to face the challenges and hopes of a changing world. Under Pedro II, Brazil became more modern, but slavery lasted longer than anywhere else in the Americas. Coffee farmers held on to enslaved workers, fighting against change even as more people spoke out against slavery. Pressure grew from other countries and from people inside Brazil, with Britain and Brazilian activists demanding an end to slavery. Step-by-step changes slowly broke down the system, but true freedom came only in 1888, when Princess Isabel signed the Golden Law. Nearly 700,000 people were freed, leading to celebrations, but no help was given for their new lives. The monarchy lost its last supporters, and within a year, the empire fell. The lasting effects of slavery, unfairness, and being left out would trouble Brazil for many years. The nation entered the modern age with deep wounds still not healed. The fight for fairness was far from over. The monarchy falling in 1889 started the old republic, controlled by rich coffee and dairy owners. Democracy was just for show. Power was held by a few special people, while most Brazilians were left out. The Great Depression broke this system, making way for Getúlio Vargas. Vargas took power in 1930, ruling as both a dictator and someone who made changes. He modernized Brazil, pushed for factories, and brought in laws for workers, earning the name Father of the Poor. But his Estado Novo government was strict, like the governments in Europe at the time. Vargas's story is complicated. He shaped modern Brazil, but at the cost of democracy. The nation became more industrial, but still very divided. The beginnings of future trouble were planted. After Vargas, Brazil had a short time of democracy, but Cold War problems made things unstable. In 1964, the military, worried about communism, took over the government with help from the US, starting 21 years of dictatorship. The government promised order but brought harsh control, stopping free speech, torture, and the years of lead. Economic growth, the Brazilian miracle, hid growing unfairness and increasing debt. By the late 1970s, money problems and public anger started a movement for democracy. Huge protests demanded direct elections, and the government began a slow, controlled change. In 1985, civilian rule came back, ending the dictatorship. The scars of being ruled by force stayed, shaping Brazil's political scene. The fight for democracy had only just begun. 1985 marked Brazil's return to democracy, a moment of hope and celebration after decades of military rule. The streets filled with people demanding freedom, and the country's first civilian president in over 20 years took office. But this transition was not easy. The wounds of dictatorship ran deep, and the new leaders faced the challenge of rebuilding trust in government and institutions. Many Brazilians were eager for change, but the path forward was uncertain and filled with obstacles. The new Constitution of 1988 was a turning point. It protected people's rights, expanded social help, and set up the base for a modern nation. For the first time, Brazilians saw their rights clearly written and protected by law. The Constitution also aimed to reduce inequality and give a voice to groups that had long been ignored. It was a bold step toward a more just society. The 1990s brought serious money problems, with inflation making life hard for ordinary people. But changes like the Plano Real, a new currency plan, finally brought stability to the economy. Families could plan for the future again, and businesses began to grow. This period of reform helped lay the groundwork for future progress, even as challenges remain. In 2002, Lula da Silva, a former metal worker and union leader, was elected president. His rise inspired millions, especially the poor and working class. Lula's government started social programs like Bolsa Familia, which helped lift millions out of poverty and gave hope to communities that had long struggled. His presidency marked a new era of inclusion and opportunity for many Brazilians. Lula's time was followed by Dilma Rousseff, Brazil's first female president. Her leadership broke barriers, but her time in office was hurt by economic troubles and massive protests. Many people felt left behind, and the country became more divided as it faced new challenges. The Operation Car Wash scandal exposed deep corruption at the highest levels of government and business. The investigation led to Rousseff's impeachment and removal from office, shaking the nation's faith in its leaders and deepening political divisions that still affect Brazil today. In 2018, Jair Bolsonaro's election marked a sharp move to the right. His presidency brought fierce debates over the Amazon rainforest, the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and growing concerns about attacks on democratic systems. The country became even more polarized, with passionate supporters and critics on both sides. Brazil's democracy survived these storms, but deep divisions and unfairness still exist. The gap between rich and poor remains wide, and political tensions continue to shape daily life. The nation's future is still uncertain, shaped by its difficult past and the choices its people make today. Every election, every protest, and every new law adds another chapter to Brazil's story. The fight for fairness and unity continues as Brazilians from all walks of life work together to build a better future for their country. Today, Brazil is a nation of amazing differences, a strong economy and a place with deep unfairness. Its cities are full of new ideas while millions still struggle in poverty. Brazilian culture, a lively mix of indigenous, African and European influences, charms the world through music, dance and football. The Amazon rainforest, very important to the planet, faces constant threats from cutting down trees and development. The challenge is finding a balance between growing and protecting, fairness and chances. Brazil's story is one of strength, creativity, and always changing. To understand Brazil is to accept its contradictions, a country always dancing between hope and hardship. Its journey from colony to a world power is not finished. Its future is not yet written. Brazil remains a land of possibility, where the samba of history never stops. The world watches, amazed by its energy and spirit.